One. Alright, you guys, so I am back with Coach Howard and Coach Schoonie for another interview. Obviously, it was a big time win this past week. Not only did we beat Central Crossing, we beat them 41-0. So I'm going to start with you, Coach Schoonie. Give me, what did you tell your guys after that win on Friday?
I told my guys to soak it in, right? It was a long off season. We've been working very hard. We had a great week of preparation, and we went into this game and we worked very hard, right? They didn't let up a second. They didn't let up a play. I told them to get it in, soak it in, right? This is what a victory should feel like. It should feel this good. Remember this moment, and let's carry on to the next week.
Coach Howard, what did you tell your guys?
So my guys kind of got the same message I guess I've been preaching for a long time is I want you guys to enjoy this, but I also think there should be an expectation for winning, right? There's an old saying that I like to use a lot of times is act like you've been there before, right? It's important to have fun and have emotions and enjoy things and live in the moment, but act like you've been there. Act professional in that way, right? Have fun when you're kind of with your friends and at home and stuff like that, but act professional. But like I said the last couple weeks on the interview, come in on Saturday ready to work, right? Because I'm not going to treat you any differently. I'll treat you the same way I would if we lost that game 41-0, right? You got to come in here and you have to find things to improve on every single day. And on Saturday mornings, I expect you to work your tail off in the weight room too. Make sure that you work out all those bumps and bruises from the previous game. So obviously it felt really nice and the kids were excited, but I think they did a good job of being professional about it and continuing with their path to success by doing the little things right.
Yep. And I do want to talk about kind of like the next opponent is just another opponent type of mentality, because it has really showed. No one really got nervous throughout the game, and it showed because Grove City won 41-0. So kind of go in and tell me, why did you guys treat Central Crossing as another opponent and not try to hype up the team that much?
Yeah, and I think it goes with the mindset as business as usual type mindset, right? We don't want to hype our guys up, make them nervous, and pretend like this game is bigger than what it is, right? When you start to say, have all this energy into one game, right? Things start to become a little bit more unhinged, right? We become a little bit less focused on what we really need to do, and that's just play our game. So it was a business as usual type of game, and we never want to peak in a game, right? We don't want to have all-out effort during the Central game, and then come Marysville, right? We're starting to go down because Central Crossing was our peak of our schedule, which they are a rival game, right? But they're not the highest level that we want to play at,
right?
And we knew that.
Absolutely. Coach Howard, do you want to add on with anything?
I think that is just the mentality that any successful program has to adopt. Is Coach Waits talked about this in practice last week. It doesn't really matter who you're scouting, who the opponent's going to be on that particular week. The emphasis should always be on improving your craft. The better you get at what you're coached to do and what you're supposed to do on a regular basis, the better we're going to be as a program moving forward, right? So yeah, you need to know some scheme stuff and some basic adjustments for what you're going to do on a week-to-week basis. But when it's all said and done and Friday night lights come on, if you haven't gotten better individually from week 1 to week 2, right, and so on down the season, then it doesn't matter who you're playing. So that's why I like that business-like approach. Is it's more focused on controlling the things you can control and improving yourself on a regular basis, right, as opposed to making adjustments based off of the people, the personnel, the scheme that you're playing any particular week.
Absolutely. And speaking of improvement, I kind of want to go into, now it's the mid-season. After Friday's game, we would be playing 5 games of our regular season. So we would be right in between our season. From the preseason and all of our scrimmages leading up to this week 5 game, kind of tell me, as a running backs coach, what have you seen the most improvement out of the running backs throughout the year?
Yeah, so my running back group, we're kind of unique as in we have a three-headed monster, right? We have Isaac Mills and Jason Three as seniors, and then we have three sophomores, right? We have Aiden McKinstry, Easton Hill, and then Mers. So, you know, my running back room, we have a lot of maturity up front, our three guys, and that's where I think I've seen them grow. They're not these juniors that are kind of still raw and don't know how to work their bodies. They're starting to understand their bodies, understand how they can move them and how they can execute a certain situation. And that's one thing that I've seen them grow in a whole bunch, is like they're not going for, you know, the knockout shot block. They're starting to position themselves to execute the play. And that's what we really need out of those three guys. And that's what I've been super proud of them about.
And I'm sure you can say that about any team as well with their running backs as well. Coach Howard, what about you with your linemen?
Yeah, offensive line wise, right, this is kind of the group that we've had three guys return as starters. Isaac Carter was an all-OCC player last year, and he's pretty much taken that form on again. He's Mr. Consistent. The coaches love his mentality and love the way that he works. He's one of those guys who can pretty much coach himself up. By the time you get to that point, a three-year starter, in the midway point of your season as a senior, you know, you're kind of at that point where you know if you've made a physical or a mental mistake, right? And maybe you get one reminder or something like that from a coach, but he's really one of those guys who can handle himself. And it's really, really helpful on the coach's end, right, on my end in particular, to have somebody that can do that, because then he can go and help and extend his knowledge to other dudes. So that's been obviously a very impressive and a very important piece to our success. And then I've got guys like Dabo, who's a 2-year starter now. Dabo's really taken a couple of steps to improve his technique. I think most people know that he's got some physical attributes that kind of set him apart from some other guys that he plays with or against. But his emphasis, especially through the first 3 weeks, was improving technique. Like Coach Schoonie said with the backs, not everything has to be a kill shot, and we were facing some of that with Gavin in the first week of the season, and he really started to improve focusing on those things, and that's going to make him a great player moving forward. Jeremy Collison, the same thing. We're just trying to get, he's a 2-year starter. We've got certain things that we're coaching him up on, right, trying to improve mistakes. Technical mistakes, right? Very few mental mistakes are made out of our guys up front, which is huge and very beneficial for us. But Jeremy's got a couple of little technique things that we'll continuously work on, but he's playing really well. He's kind of calm, cool, and collected, Mr. Consistent. And then the two newer starters to the offensive line this year, Rhys Williams at left guard and Nate Elliott at right tackle, right? Both of those guys love the game of football. Right, like Rhys is probably the one guy on the team who is sometimes here before the coaches are even here, just hanging out, waiting to start. And he lives, breathes, and dives Grove City football. So he's really, really fun to be around. Right, he makes practice enjoyable. He's one of those guys who's cracking jokes left and right. And he has some nice physical attributes that'll help out in the long run. Right, we've got some technique stuff with him that we're continuing to work on. But he's doing much, much better, and he's really settled into his role between Dabo and Collison over there. Nate just being the lone sophomore starter, right? He's doing his good job holding his own. It can be tough as a young buck trying to start in the OCC, and we're about to run into that OCC schedule coming up here. So it's been nice for him to have some success early so we can rely on those things moving forward. And again, just like with all these guys, I've been a broken record. There's certain technique things that I nitpick all the time, and they know my expectations about technique as an offensive lineman. So we'll continue to coach those up, and when we see stuff on film, we'll fix it. And it's got to be fixed in the first couple of days of practice the following week. So same thing's been true.
Absolutely. So you got all that. I'm going to dive in just a tiny bit into Marysville. I know you guys are on this just another opponent type of mentality, so I don't want to dive too much into them. But what I will say is, how's your kids been this week? How are the running backs? How's the linemen? And Schoonie, I will start with you.
Yeah, things have been good. You know, we've kind of got off that high of, okay, we won. Right, we won by a significant amount, Okay, now let's get back to work. So that transition always kind of takes, I would say, a few minutes for our guys to be like, okay, now the grind is back on. Now it's, okay, we got to go win another one. Running backs have been solid. Mills has been out for a few days with some bug issues. I think he's running a high fever, so we've had to rely on Jason Threet to step up. Aiden McKinstry is starting to get a little bit more reps with the varsity practice squad, so we are starting to integrate some of our younger guys, start to grow them up a little bit. Christian Isaacs, he's always a consistent guy, right? I get on him just to say something to him, but he knows what he's doing. Very mature back. We're just trying to work on hitting the hole a little bit faster and things like that. So.
And I wish the best for Mills as well as he continues to recover from his high fever. Coach Howard, what about you?
Yeah, our guys have been excited. They're obviously everybody's pretty juiced up at the success we've had so far, but it's just time to keep plugging away. And Marysville's another great opponent. They have an impressive tradition, and they've had some impressive players come through there, but it's like we said just a couple minutes ago, and you've referenced a couple times, it's just another game, right, for us. The mentality of the program has to remain the same and constant week to week. There's no highs, there's no lows, right? Treat every single opponent the exact same way. Know what they're going to show you, know how to react to it, know how to respond to it. And we've done a great job. Really good first 2 days of practice. We've got a weight room session here and a lift, and then we'll get out on the field and hopefully get the week rolling here, midweek rolling here on another good one.
And then I'd like to end off the interview by kind of asking you guys, throughout the first half of the season, kind of evaluate both of yourselves as coaches towards your players throughout the year.
Yeah, it's definitely evolved, and the evolution of my coaching, right? I'm a very young coach, right? So I'm trying to pick up a lot of good things that all these coaches are doing, right? And my one development, evolutionary area is probably building those relationships with players, right? It's how to coach a player where they need to be coached at, right? It's not always tearing somebody down to build them back up. Maybe it's just a little like slap on the butt, like, okay, come on, get it next time, sort of thing. So it's really trying to build those relationships and have those personal coaching relationships with players to get the most out of them, and not trying to be a one-stop shop type of coach.
And what about you, Coach Howard?
Yeah, I think what Coach Schoonie said, that's always a big piece of coaching, is you got to be able to adapt to the needs of the player. And while your personality may sway you one way or the other, it's important to kind of understand who are some of the guys that can respond to higher pressure, right, higher heat, if you will, and who are the guys you kind of need to just whisper in their ear, make a quick correction, and move on with the rest of the day. That's always something that I have appreciated, both as a player when I was growing up, right, and now as a coach, trying to make sure that you find that balance. So that's a good one. Something definitely I still try to focus in on. And for me, this week in particular, this year in particular, as seasons go on, it's just finding consistency, right? Like having consistency in your Monday plans, your Tuesday plans, your Wednesday plans, right? And it goes along with the next game type of mentality is, what are the drills we need to do as an offensive line that address the weaknesses we've shown on a week-to-week basis, right? Use those on a plan, right? Schedule those out, make sure that you hit them every single week. And then build off of those from there, right? Coaches have sometimes a tendency, to not explain why a drill is important, right, to a particular play, and that's something I try to focus in on this year. Is like, this drill is specific to this play. You'll use this type of technique if you see a defensive lineman who's aligned like this, or if we're playing a defensive line that shows this type of pass rush move. Here's the technique that we need to use to make sure that you can defend against it. So now that I've got some players on the offensive line that have some experience, it's easier to coach that way, right? Because they want to know, I've seen this in the past. What's the best thing that you think I can do to help protect against it? So that's the kind of stuff I like to think of. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, coaches, do you guys have any last words that you guys want to say in this interview before you guys start your practice today?
Go Dogs.
Yeah, ready for another week, man. Excited for it. Another opportunity to play at home on Friday. expect to see a crowd, just like we did against Central Crossing. Again, thank you to the fans that travel all the time, come support us, the parents.
Yeah.
Thanks to the band, right, for always showing out. They do a great job in supporting us and making it a loud environment, just to try to rattle the opposing team a little bit, right? The cheerleaders as well. All that stuff kind of helps us. And we're at home for the first time in a couple weeks. We can't wait to be there.
Alrighty, go Dogs.
Thanks,
Go
man.
Dogs.